Hello and welcome to Friday. This is Highly Tangential. I'm your host, Sean Ellis, and today we have a really great show planned for y'all. It's the 29th of January, and we are broadcasting from unceded Lenni Lenape territory, coming at you on radiofreelambertville.com. So I think we're going to start out the show today with something I've been really looking forward to. This is the first segment of our "Won't You Be My Neighbor" new kind of segment in the series, and today we have we're talking to Claire Addis, who is the author of the blog outoftheordinaryfood.com. This is an absolute treasure, and we're going to talk with Claire in one moment. Let's get our intro music going here.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, could you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?
First edition of our new segment,
Television neighbor,
called "Won't You Be My
together
Neighbor?"
again.
I am so happy to have with us today Claire Addis, who is a person of many, many talents, a writer, a filmmaker, screenwriter, artist, a mother, and a blogger, and a chef, with a blog about cooking, among other things. I guess it started out as cooking. So I just want to welcome you to the program, Highly Tangential. Claire, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
Could you start by describing your blog, Out of the Ordinary, and your reason for starting it? Because this is what I kind of wanted to focus on, because I just absolutely love it, and I think that it's an amazing phenomenon. So yeah, maybe you could describe it for the audience and why you were moved to start it out.
Oh, okay. It was a long time ago, so it's really almost hard to remember, but I started out, I like to cook, but I'm not a fancy cook, and I just wanted to share recipes, and songs, I guess. Originally it started out as really a food blog. It was just recipes and songs and very little else. And I kind of envisioned it as, making dinner with your friends and listening to music with them. And my recipes aren't they're a little weird, but they're not fancy or well measured, or there are some people are quick to point out when you leave a step out. But I eventually, and I called it The Ordinary because for several reasons. One, because an ordinary was an inn in London in the, I guess, maybe 19th century or sort of Dickensian era, where travelers could come and have a meal and then maybe spend the night, and then it would be sort of a communal table. And I kind of like that idea. And I like the idea that I have a very ordinary kitchen and you can make, strange and imaginative things coming out of an ordinary kitchen with ordinary equipment and ingredients. But then as time went on, I started to value the writing side more than the cooking side. And I started to write, I guess, sort of small essays to go with each recipe, to the point where I kind of cared more about the small essay than I did about the recipe itself. And I realized that I just had a lot to say that, I wasn't sure anyone would want to hear it. And it also, because I was a writer when I was younger, and then I was a filmmaker, and then I had kids and tried to, get a job, and I had sort of stopped writing. And something about the act of writing every day, because I did this every day, and it was something that I wasn't trying to write a masterpiece. I was just writing a short essay to precede a recipe every day. And I started to realize that the more you do something, the more you do, the more you think, the more you think, the more you write, the more you write. And you get into a sort of the habit of thinking about what you're going to write about. And that's just a really rosy feeling. That's just sort of a beautiful feeling. So I guess that's sort of selfish in a way. And then at some point, I like the idea of sharing weird things I found that I love, because I tend to love things. So weird Egyptian poetry from before I knew poetry existed, or songs I like, or movies that I feel like, few people had ever seen because they were so small and weird. And so it just sort of became about writing and sharing stuff. And I guess that's the long answer.
Yeah. Well, actually, that kind of gets us into my next question for you, which you partially answered there. You've been doing, as you said, you've been doing this for a long time. I think almost 10 years now, and it's a long time to keep doing something. So obviously, you just told us about what in the process, you're drawn to, and we'll get to. Your obsessions later in the program, but I'm just curious if there's anything else that you attribute your persistence to.
Well, I feel like actually in the past I kind of stopped for a while. I stopped posting. I think I posted once in 2018, once in 2020. I did stop for a while, and I guess I would talk more about that than about my persistence, because that was the sort of opposite of that. But I feel like there were a couple of things that contributed to that. When I had been working as a waitress on the weekends when my kids were smaller, and then I got, it's not a real job, but it's a Monday through Friday, 9-ish to 5-ish job. So I had less time, and just that I was discouraged with writing, and just discouraged. And then I think also that the whole, Trump being elected thing, which we can talk about later, but that I found that I just haven't written much since then for a variety of reasons. I just found that quelling. I just sort of put a light out in some level, but I do keep coming back to it, maybe once a year, but I think about it, and I think about it as something that I miss and kind of need. And then just recently, just the last month, I don't know if it's a coincidence and with what else is going on in America, but I started writing again, and just this last week I started writing every day again. on a smaller level, just shorter things, and sort of a little bit of a different vein. But there's just this sort of feeling rush back, and I didn't realize how much I needed that. And I'm hoping I can keep up with it. I mean, it's just for myself. Again, it's a bit selfish, but I do need that. I do need to write every day, and I realize that the more I write, as I said, the more I write, and I realized that the last week I've been thinking more about what I'm going to write than I have about all of the other stresses and worries in the world, and I think that that's just important. And I feel like I've always said to other people that's something you should do, and it's hard to take your own advice sometimes.
Yeah. So it's obvious that you're getting a lot out of the process, and I feel the same way. So if I'm working on a project, it's always kind of in the back of my mind, and some of my best ideas come out, when I'm just kind of going for a walk or taking a shower. So it sounds like there's a lot of value there, and a lot of excitement for you in following those threads. But I think one of the other things that I really love about the blog is that it has a manifesto, which lends a lot of gravitas, almost like proclaiming itself a movement or something. And I'd love to read the manifesto now, to the listeners, if that's okay. And, maybe you can respond to it. Okay. So this is the Ordinary Manifesto, and it's a series of bullet points, as manifestos are. So here we go. Quote, "We believe, as the specialists say, that nobody is special, which means that everybody is. Everybody is strange and surprising and capable of remarkable things. We believe that there's great value in just being alive, staying alive, and keeping the ones you love alive. If you notice everything and question everything as you move through life. I joke a lot about championing mediocrity and lack of ambition, but I'm speaking of those things as they relate to our current definition of success. We believe that the way we define success and the achievements that we value and reward in our society are skewed. Compassion, kindness, and imagination deserve more recognition than wealth, fame, or salesmanship, and are worth passionately pursuing. We believe that there's value in all jobs if they're done with love and care, and we believe that this includes the job of caring for a home and raising children. It's a cliche to say that this is the hardest or most important job, but there is some truth to that old chestnut. Nobody should be criticized for maintaining a career outside the home while they raise children, but nobody should be deemed a failure if they decide to put that career on hold. We realize that it can seem like the most ordinary job at times in its relentless everydayness, so it's important to notice everything and to approach it with creativity. We believe that creativity is valuable for each person and for all people in a society. This is true on a large scale in the creation of books and films and music and the reception of those things, but it's also true on the small scale of the ordinary as well. Day-to-day life can be elevated by the application of imagination and observation. Preparing meals, for instance, which seems like a tedious chore to many, can become a source of joy as well as sustenance. In all creative endeavors, as in life, soul, grace, and honesty are more important than cleverness or talent. We believe there's great beauty in simple things if they're well seasoned. This is true in art and food and life. We believe there's a beauty in economy, in using every part of something, in having what you need and using what you have. We believe there's a beauty in every day, in the everyday, in things that you do every day. There's beauty in the rhythm and the pattern and the expected, and in the times that pattern changes, even for a moment, which can make you step outside of your expectations and seem very perfect. We believe that there's beauty in art that celebrates the ordinary, and in ordinary life lived as art. When something is captured and observed, when it is noticed, it can become important. We believe it's important to find balance in your life, to find a way that you're comfortable taking things from the world and giving them back to the world. So That's really powerful, I think, and I'm hoping that maybe you could elaborate or reflect. Is there anything that you would add these days that or is it as perfect as when you wrote it, as far as manifestos go?
I don't know about perfect. I feel like a lot of it kind of applies to quarantine life in a way that I couldn't have predicted. But I feel that I mean I didn't know this, but a lot of people who probably used to have more fabulous lives are now stuck kind of with the everyday, kind of stuck at home with their kids while, homeschooling their kids while they're working. And a lot of this maybe is weirdly applicable to that. And I couldn't have predicted that. But yeah, I don't know. Nothing I would add or change, I don't think. I mean, I guess because I have gone through such discouragement, I wish I could. No, I think no, I guess there's not much I would change. I might focus on different aspects of it now than I did at the time. Now that I have a job, and so it's a little bit different. And now that actually my kids are older, so it's kind of it's a whole different world raising teenagers or having a kid off in college. It's a whole different worries and concerns than having little kids. But I feel like it's the same kind of idea that maybe even more so because with little kids, there's, every moment of every day is you want to pay attention to it, but you're too exhausted. And with older kids, I mean, you get like, once a month you might get a hug and you don't want to forget that. So I guess it's like, I mean, my life has changed, but my beliefs haven't really.
Yeah. And I really, what I find interesting, about what you said earlier is that, you feel like a lot of people are now in this position of, quote unquote ordinariness, and it's, uncomfortable maybe for them, or, they haven't experienced it before and they have to reckon with this new perspective. And, I think that is, provokes some changes and, kind of internal changes. And so I'm going to jump to a question that I kind of had slotted for later, but I think it seems like a good segue here. You and I met originally. I had first moved to Lambertville in 2002, and we met through the Lambertville Coalition for Peace, and around the activism, around trying to prevent the Iraq War. And so I wonder if there's some element of activism or resistance in the act of, writing for this blog.
But I was just thinking about that today. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. There are sort of two answers to that, and one is today I was thinking that part of the reason that I haven't written for the last 4 years is because things have been just, in my mind, just unspeakably terrible. And if they're separating families at the border for me to write "I love pencils" just seemed just so trivial. And then I felt like, I mean, a huge part of why the whole Trump administration, if I might be so plain about it, was just horrible to me is I just felt powerless. I felt there was nothing I could write there. I mean, I've been in that time to protest, and I've, just completely basically useless. I've shared stuff on Facebook, or tried to not be so crushed that I didn't keep track of what was going on. But I couldn't. I felt like there's nothing I could write that would change anything. There was nothing I could write that was important to read, and it was I would write stuff and then just erase it because it seemed I was not the person to talk about anything. It was so that was sort of demoralizing, and I feel a little cowardly about it now, but I don't know how I could have done it differently. Also, I just feel like we were all sort of worn down. I mean, it was exhausting keeping up with it. So that's one part of it. And then another part is that I was thinking about this today, and I have thought about it in the past, that there was it's an old sort of 60s feminist, a second wave of feminism adage that the personal is political. And it's a bit of a dated idea, but I think it's important on several levels. One, I mean, everything political that we do is that that anyone does politically is, if they have the best intentions in mind, is to change the personal lives of the people that they represent, or the people they're fighting for, or themselves, or their families. I mean, the worst intention people are just trying to make money for themselves, or gain power. But what you and I think, understand as political activism is trying to make people's personal lives better. So I feel like on that level of, if the that on that level of the personal being political, that's true of just everybody's day-to-day life, but also how you care for your children, how you feed your family, and all of that. And if you have, a lot of my blog is about appreciating things and having time to make a nice meal, and having, which doesn't need to be an expensive meal, but a lot of people don't even have time for that if they're working several jobs. And I think the personal is political. I still love that. I still love the early feminist filmmakers who made films about women doing housework. I love all of that. But I also think that and I'm glad that it no longer just applies to women. I think that men are experiencing that too. Men are also raising children. Men are also cooking and cleaning. And in an ideal world, it will all be equally shared, and it will all be equally supported, and people will have time and support to do all of that. So I think on that level, just writing about cooking and raising children and that kind of thing is political. And then on another level, I also write about just things that fascinate me, like, ancient Greek philosophers, Stoic philosophers, or Dostoevsky, or new music I found, or some weird film I've seen. And I feel like part of what's been depressing the last 4 years, or 400 years, is closed-minded people who don't see beyond what's right in front of them, or are suspicious of anything that's foreign or new. So I feel like if there's even some small part where I'm sharing something that I'm enthusiastic about, that someone else says, oh, I've never, heard Fela Kuti before, and I love that, then they're, even if just a little bit, that is also political, just opening minds and making people want to learn more about the world around them, I guess. And I guess I realize that that's sort of a lofty view of some crazy lady sitting around writing about stuff she cares about, but it's a small step, right? I mean, and then I guess the final thing is I really do believe in, just kindness and generosity. And I think a lot of if you can just convey that on some level, that's not nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, your work has, I think your writing style itself has a lot of kindness and curiosity in it, which I want to get to in 1 second. But actually, this is maybe a good, well, there's one thing I wanted to say in response to what you said, especially the first part of, where you were talking about, being kind of depressed and feeling like you couldn't make a difference or see the change that you were working towards, sometimes as an activist. And I definitely went through that myself at various points, certainly during the whole Iraq war resistance, the resistance to that war, because you're trying to change things kind of on a national or federal or global level. And you're not really seeing the direct influence that that you could have on much smaller, more local, and like you said, personal levels. And that's why I think a lot of what's coming out of the Black Lives Matter movement, the focus on mutual aid and direct aid to people, direct assistance to people, is so encouraging. And it's very focused on the community and the people who you interact with every day. So
I think also too, I think because both you and I had very small children when we were trying to make the Iraq war stop, and just the sense that they were vulnerable, and that was sort of terrifying. And I think now we have teenagers, and just to see my teenagers more as upset, I should say, about the Black Lives Matter movement as I am, and more active, in supporting Black Lives Matter and fighting that oppression, there's a sort of hopefulness there that is different from just. I mean, I still worry about them, but it's not the same kind of what world have we made for them. It's kind of more of a what world are they going to make for themselves feeling, which is, I think, is hopeful. Exhausting.
Yeah. It's so beautiful to see them feel like they have agency and to actually follow through with that.
Exhausting.
It's
It's a little Fela Kuti, as Claire mentioned earlier. This is Zombie. unless you tell them to go. Zombie not go stop unless you tell them to stop. Zombie not go turn unless you tell them to turn. Zombie not go think unless you tell them to think. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie not go go unless you tell them to go. Zombie not go stop unless you tell them to stop. Zombie not go turn unless you tell them to turn. Zombie not go think unless you tell them to think. Zombie, oh zombie. Zombie, oh zombie. Tell them to go straight. Na joro, jara, joro. No break, no job, no sense. Na joro, jara, joro. Tell them to go kill. Na joro, jara, joro. No break, no job, no sense. Na joro, jara, joro. Tell them to go quench. Na joro, jara, joro. No break, no job, no sense. Na joro, jara, joro. Go and kill. Go and die. Go and quench. Put up all the mass. Go and quench. Go and kill. Go and die. Put up all the mass. Go and die. Go and quench. Go and kill. Put up all the mass. Joro, jara, joro. So be when I one way. Joro, jara, joro. So be when I one way. Joro, jara, joro. So be when I one way. Joro, jara, joro. Attention, big match, slow match, left on, right on, left on, double on, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, fall down, get ready. Attention, big match, slow match, left on, right on, bottom, double on, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, fall in. Order. Attention, big match, slow man, left on, right on, bottom, double on, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, fall down, get ready. Attention, big match, slow man, left on, right on, bottom, double on, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, fall down, get ready. Hot! Order! One more time, everybody. Attention, quick march, slow march, left on, right on, bottom, double on, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, fall down, get ready. Attention, quick march, slow march, left on, right on, bottom, double on, salute, open your hand, stand at ease, fall in, fall out, fall down, get ready. Hot! Order! Yes! Yes!
Zombie by OOTO. If there was ever a song for the times, oh my gosh, this is it. Wow, that was a long song, but that was powerful. Yeah, Zombies. Yeah, we can play anything. This is freeform radio.
Oh, how about?
So, well, Claire, why don't you give us something else to play? That was amazing. You know.
Can you play anything?
yeah, we can play anything. This is freeform radio.
Oh, how about? Oh gosh. How about Mary Chow Nina Galera? Can you find that?
Yeah.
Oh, miña maconha, miña torcida, miña querida, miña galera. Oh, miña cachoeira, miña menina, miña flamenga, miña capoeira. Oh, miña menina, miña querida, miña valera. Oh, miña maloca, miña la rica, miña cachaça, miña cadela. Miña vagabunda, oh, miña vida, miña mambembe, miña ladera. Oh, miña menina, miña querida, miña valera. Oh, miña torcida, miña flamenga, miña cadera. Oh, miña maconha, miña torcida, miña querida, miña galera. Miña vagabunda, miña mambembe, miña beleza, miña capoeira. Oh, miña menina, miña querida, miña valera. Miña torcida, miña flamenga, miña cadera. Oh, miña maconha, miña torcida, miña querida,
in your previous answer, which is, a certain, to try to inspire a certain curiosity and also inspire a kindness in people. And I think that is really, kind of, I find it serendipitous that you're the first guest on the Won't You Be My Neighbor segment, because there's something very Mr. Rogers-like to your writing style. There's a softness, like I said, curiosity, a noticing of beauty and details, a gratitude. It's almost childlike, not in, there's complexities there, but there's a kind of a naive approach, maybe, which is, I don't know, just feels warm and comforting. So, for example, one of your first posts starts with, quote, "Have you ever had a rotten day and then you stop somewhere for a cup of tea or a beer or a," all caps, "full bottle and 2 mozzarella," and then suddenly everything seems better, even if you can't afford it. So, Mr. Rogers might not say you have a full bottle of wine, but there's something, like, they reminded me of something that he might say, and then one of your more recent, I think it was just yesterday's post. "If I'm being honest, yesterday was a challenge for someone trying to be hopeful about winter. A snow day with no snow. I did feel down. I did feel under the weather. but this morning there was a light asserting itself against a heavy, slaty sky, and that's one of my favorite things ever. And though I felt too tired for a run on the towpath, Cleo, your dog, decided we should forge on, and she is my boss. And I felt such a swelling of hope and joy just seeing the light and the colors. I felt it in my heart. So, do you see the connection that I'm seeing?
I honestly, when I was little, I was not allowed to watch television in the daytime, so I never saw Mr. Rogers or Sesame Street or any of that. But I have seen clips of him since and read about him, and I love him. And I have been actually thinking a lot recently about certain children's books like Frog and Toad are Friends or The Snowy Day, which are just, to me, just so strange but so perfect. And there's just something about them that's just meandering and sweet, but just, not boring. I mean, they're uneventful, but they're not boring at all in a way that a kid can. David and I were just remembering when you take a toddler for a walk and they, going up on a stoop or up a ramp is that's like 10 minutes of activity. Right. And I feel like I'm still sort of in that. I like things that meander, and I like things that are simple, and I like sort of a kind of a weird honesty about things. I like things that are just strange but sort of perfect, and I guess so. Yeah, I absolutely see that. And I think that a lot of what I try to capture is that sort of idea of, remembering what it feels like to be really excited to walk up onto a stoop or discover something new for the first time. Yeah, I do feel like. I don't think it's quite intentional, but I feel like my out of the ordinary voice, is a lot softer and sweeter than I'm a pretty sweary person in real life. Well, and I don't. It wasn't right? It wasn't intentional, but I don't. I do feel like that's become kind of a thing that I've not cultivated exactly, because that suggests that it was intentional, but that I've just has sort of naturally grown. It's just sort of like a sweetness and a slowness, and just appreciating those qualities. Mm-hmm. Which is. I mean, I'm Mr. Rogers, I'm sure, but just all like a lot of children's books that are just, and they're all a little weird, but you get them. There's always something like a little odd about them, but they just make perfect sense, and I love that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to ask you about some of your things that you're excited by these days. Maybe not stoops and the towpath specifically, but more in the culinary realm. Like, what are you obsessed with right now, food-wise or cooking-wise, that you want to share with people? And
that's kind of a funny one, because I feel like I'm a little bit of a slump that way. I feel like I almost don't. I don't know. I feel like I want to. I feel like I make the same things all the time.
Yeah. What's kind of your go-to?
I guess I like the idea of. This is very banal, but I like the idea of buying vegetables that are in season and then figuring out the best thing to do with them. But there's also a part of me which wants to make something that, like, combine flavors no one's ever combined before, or try some method of cooking that no one's ever discovered before in the whole history, all over the world. No one's ever tried before. And I think about that sometimes, I guess. And last week it was Burns' night, and I tried. I don't know if they eat haggis, which is boiled inside a sheep's stomach, but we're vegetarian. Yeah. So I was my vegetarian haggis, which is sort of lentils and mushrooms and stuff, like other oatmeal. I was going to boil it inside of bagel dough, because you boil bagels, and then I was going to bake it, and it was just an unmitigated disaster. It was a method no one's ever thought of before, or maybe thought of and tried, but never talked about, because it doesn't work. So I guess my obsession now would be to kind of get out of this rut by trying something different. And it's kind of, actually, Isaac, who's 15, my son, is interested in different spices and combinations of flavor. So my new idea, he's picky. So I'll run my dinner idea by him before I make it. And my new pleasure is just to ask him. I was thinking about making something with rice and vegetables and spices, and what spices should I use and what vegetables should I use? And he's got very definite ideas, and they're not what I would do, because you kind of get sick of what you would do. It's like, cooking is kind of like handwriting. You do the same. You can't, whatever you make, you're going to know that you made it, which is why I think, honestly, it's fun to go to a restaurant, because it's like reading someone else's handwriting. It's something you would never expect. So I guess just having Isaac sort of advise me has been a new way of looking at things.
Well, that's really beautiful, and it's a very collaborative approach. And it just made me, your answer made me think of something you said in one of your blogs, that cooking dinner is one of my greatest pleasures in life. I believe cooking is like creating art if you use your imagination and creativity, which I think that is a testament to what you were just talking about there. And I love the metaphor to handwriting, that there's always your signature, or people can know it was you who made it, and there's something that artwork artists strive to have that kind of that kind of recognizability, or I don't know, that's not a word, but they want people to be able to know it's their work. I think there's a certain effort towards that, but what you're saying is it's just going to happen no matter what. People are going to be.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Claire Addis, author of the blog outoftheordinaryfood.com. And Claire was just talking about, I guess I think I want to play a Scottish band, and I know that this band is one that Claire and I both enjoy and are big fans of, and this just seemed appropriate, talking about the small things and little bits of beauty in the world. This is We Rule the School by Belle and Sebastian off their first album, Tiger Milk.
On a beech tree really calm and she loved me. Why did she do it? Was she scared? Was she bored? On a beech tree really calm and she loved me. Why did she do it? Was she scared? Was she pushed? Do something pretty while you can. Don't fall asleep. Skating a pirouette on ice is cool. Do something pretty while you can. Don't be a fool. Reading the gospel to yourself. secret. You know the world was made for men. You know the world was made for men. You know the world was made for men.
What do you think about it? Like, what's in your current playlist or your CD player? You know, what are you currently obsessed with musically right now?
Well, I have two. So one is sort of weird. Well, it's very weird, but it's I'm just completely obsessed. I'm completely obsessed with the Shakira song and video, and it's I don't own any music by her. I really couldn't name a song by her other than this one, but it's her and some guy, and I can't remember his name. It's called I think the Bicicleta, bicycle,
Okay.
and I just I just keep playing it over and over, and it makes me cry. And my kids think I'm crazy, and I possibly am, but there's something about it I love. I mean, there's a lot about it which I could rationally tell you about. Like, I love the fact that it's two Colombian artists who have gone on to achieve fame elsewhere in the world, and they return to their roots in Colombia. They use Colombian instruments. I like the I mean, it's in Spanish, but I like, as I understand it, the nostalgia of the lyrics, which is about, you know, life, as I understand it. I'm sure this is wrong, but life is complicated. Let's just ride a bicycle. And I love her. I love her. I love how she nods her head when she accepts the bicycle from him. I love the way she dances. I love how happy she seems. And it's a very odd, I really couldn't name another song that she did. So that's one that I'm completely obsessed with. It's a bit random. And then I guess just Manu Chao, who you just played, is someone that I've had maybe 2 albums from him since 2000 maybe, and I've always liked them. And then at the very beginning of the lockdown, I sort of started searching YouTube and discovered live performances of him with his, I guess, band Radio Bemba sound system. And for some reason, it was exactly what I needed at that time. In you know, kind of a cold March where you're stuck in one place. He speaks like 8 languages, and he's just got so much energy, and he's political. He's cheerful. He has a song called "The Merry Blues," which is just, I feel like it's about I love a balance between light and darkness in all things, in art and in music and in life. And it's sort of that idea that I get that there's sadness. I am sad, but I'm also going to find things to be cheerful or hopeful about. And I feel like that's sort of my, just, whether I like it or not, that's how I go through life. Like I can be sort of dark and hard. I like those things too. I like exploring, or understanding that there's darkness, but I feel like I have sort of a buoyant personality where the hopefulness is always going to kind of, so I love that. I love that balance that he has. He speaks different languages. He's sort of, one music critic described him as like the punkiest person ever, because he's just completely inclusive, different musical styles, like 8 different languages. He's punk rock, he's ska, he's reggae, he's, anyway, so it's just.
And where is he originally from?
Fascinating story. He's from the Basque region of Spain, which is also a current obsession of mine, and wow. Including like the language and just everything about it, which is between Spain and France. And then he was, because for political reasons, his family he's older than us, John. He's
Really? Is it possible?
Yeah, he came like in the late 80s when I was still. You're younger than me, but when I was still in high school, he had a band with his brother called Mano Negra. And I'm going to go on about this too long, but he was from the Basque region in Spain, and then political oppression caused him to move to Paris. And he grew up in Paris, and he learned a lot. Part of the reason he's sort of more international in his musical ideas is because he learned a lot from the buskers of the, in the underground or the metro. Mm-hmm. So then he lived in, I think he's in Barcelona now, but he's spent a lot of time in Latin and South America. I don't know. But there's something about the lockdown that I just sort of needed, that the energy of his live concerts, which David actually thinks are a bit manic.
Well, I mean, but when you go to a live concert, you want that kind of mania, right? I mean, you want
Yeah.
to go, and,
Well,
you want
and I
that
just feel
energy.
like I'm 51. I have insomnia. I just needed that energy. And then it's funny that you would say that, because one of the things I read about Manu Chao is he believes that society lacks sort of a place for collective therapy, and that's what he thinks of concerts as, is just a place for people to collectively kind of vent, I guess. I don't know.
Wow, that is a really fascinating philosophy, and I mean, I think we're seeing it play out. During the pandemic, we don't have concerts.
Yeah, and I've heard people do compilations on YouTube of just fans' reactions. It doesn't even matter what, just sort of like just to remember what that felt like.
Right, right. I mean, I don't know if you got to go to Porch Fest at all, but we were, so I was talking to people about it, and just live the experience of live music alone. I think they didn't expect to have the reaction they did, and and they didn't realize the value in that until it was gone for so long.
Yeah. I actually walked through. Malcolm came home for the weekend, which is I think he came home because of COVID. You can't really come home. So that was the one weekend at home, and we actually walked through it, and it was nice just because I hadn't seen him for a while, but we just sort of walked through, and it was nice just to hear all the music from all the different porches, kind of like going through a movie or something. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was concert everywhere and nowhere at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that since we're not going to concerts, we're listening to our music in other ways and at different times. And, you always include a soundtrack to go with your blog. And it seems like you've been giving, these are kind of little gifts or morsels for your listeners to listen to while they cook. And, it's so funny because I chose this time slot for Highly Tangential because I was hoping to catch some people cooking at home at the end of the week, sipping on their cocktail and making food. And, I just love listening to music when I cook. And so I'm wondering if at some point you might, put a little playlist together. We have a guest DJ at the end of every show. And I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in doing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. We definitely have cooking music.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's what this playlist would be, is cooking music. So wonderful.
This is La Bicicleta by Carlos Vives and Shakira.
Santa Marta hasta la Arenosa. Llévame en tu bicicleta, pa' que juguemos por la tapa y en chancleta. Que siempre que alguna le muestres el Tayrona, después no querrá irse pa' Barcelona.
A mi manera, descomplicado, en una bici que me lleva a todos lados. Un vallenato desesperado, una cartica que yo guardo donde te escribí. Que te sueño y que te quiero tanto, que hace rato está en mi corazón. Latiendo por ti, latiendo por ti. Aquí yo guardo donde te escribí. Que te sueño y que te quiero tanto, que hace rato está en mi corazón. Latiendo por ti, latiendo por ti.
Llévame en tu bicicleta, óyeme Carlos, llévame en tu bicicleta. Que siempre que alguna le muestres el Tayrona, después no querrá irse pa' Barcelona. Llévame en tu bicicleta, óyeme Carlos, llévame en tu bicicleta. Que si a mi pique tú le muestras el Tayrona, después no querrá irse pa' Barcelona.
Nos hemos decidido a revelaros este misterio.
Distinction tal, foreign tal, 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 distinction.
So many nights with your shadow in my bed, yeah. So many nights, baby, you whisper in my head, whoa. So many nights, sing along the merry blues. So many nights, I told you once, I told you twice, the merry blues. I told you once, I told you twice, the merry blues. I cannot sleep, I'm set by your pretty body. I cannot sleep, I wanna set on fire. So many nights, can't keep from going down. I told you once, I told you twice, the merry blues. I told you once, I told you twice, the merry blues. Oh, the merry blues. The I feel the moody like a biggie. I told you once, I told you twice, the merry blues. So many nights, I sing along the merry blues. So many nights, can't keep from going down. The merry blues, the merry blues. Like a rubber to the sky. I know you like a marijuana smoke. I feel the booty like a picky picky. I know you like it like a rubber duck style. I know you like a marijuana smoke.
Permanece a la escucha. Atento. Bienvenido. Mantenga velocidad y rumbo.
Como dice mi amigo el gato, el
Which, you know,
futuro llegó hace rato.
I mean, basically, your blog is is 10 years of simple, healthy, delicious vegetarian recipes. It's an absolute treasure trove, and I highly recommend everyone, to check it out and to make stuff from it. It's, I don't think we mentioned the blog URL, but we'll do it now, and I'll make sure to do it, earlier before we air this as well. But the URL is outoftheordinaryfood.com. So what I wanted to ask you about it is, because there's got to be thousands of recipes in here, or maybe, I think it's over 1,000. Did you ever think about combining them into like a physical cookbook that, you would publish and print? Is that something that?
Yeah, I did, and I approached people. I've been trying to get various things published for a while now, and I think that's part of the discouragement. That's part of why I stopped writing at all. It wasn't because I couldn't get a cookbook published, because that seems sort of far-fetched, but I wanted to do a book of essays and recipes, and you could have a CD with it. Other people don't listen to the CD, and then but and at one point, out of the ordinary, I started writing fictional stories, which I also put on there, and that is more important to me. I mean, my fiction stories are the most important thing to me, and in an ideal world, I would be supporting myself as a fiction writer. But I have tried to get a cookbook published, or a book of fiction. I've written a novel. I tried to get that published. I can't even get a story in a online magazine published. So I seem to either lack the skills or the talent. But yeah, I have tried.
Or maybe the right agent. Who knows? Don't sell yourself so short.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with who you know, right?
I guess. Yeah. I'm sure. I know that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, have you gotten responses like, do people say, oh, well, they don't know what to do with the format, basically? Like, are there other cookbooks out there that have,
I've just gotten
essays and,
Yeah, there must be. And if not, there should be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've gotten more response. I guess I've more tried to get agents, and they just, the response I've frequently gotten is, this would be a hard thing to sell. This is weird.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe now that everyone's home and cooking at home, during COVID, and they're living ordinary lives, there may be some renewed interest there. But do you have any favorite cookbooks, go-to cookbooks that you can leave us with, that, or are you mainly like really just like, I'm gonna pull this out of thin air?
Well, I do like to not use recipes. But I really love Deborah Madison. I thought she was vegetarian. Turns out she's not, which is fine. She's written books that are kind of, dictionaries or Bibles, if you will, for vegetarian cooks. Which she basically, one is my favorite, which is Worn to a Nub, is Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone, and it's kind of what I love about it is that she's not giving you a recipe that you have to follow. She gives you sort of blueprints. So she'll give you, if you want to make a soup, these are the steps that you would do. If you want to make a stew, these are the steps that you would take. And you can vary that any way you want. And then she'll go, she has one section called, which is a rather large section, called Vegetables, the Heart of the Matter. And she'll just go through each vegetable, what it tastes good with, different ways to cook it, what to do, what not to do. So it's basically... rather than, she does also have recipes that you can follow perfectly and then you'll make a perfect meal. But she also has just, if you want to experiment, here's what to bear in mind, and here's what works, and here's what has worked for me. And, she's vastly experienced. She's owned restaurants. And I kind of love that. I kind of love that idea of giving you something like a place to start, and then you can take that wherever you want to. And I also like her tone, which is very matter of fact, slightly poetical, and occasionally funny, but just anyway, any of her, I have a bunch of her books. Any of them I would suggest.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the suggestion. It actually reminds me, I've never personally read any of her stuff, but I'm making a little note here to go check it out, because it reminds me of one of my favorite books, which has a very similar approach. I don't know if the author took this from Deborah Madison or what, but Mark Bittman's How to Cook Everything Vegetarian is to me very similar in that, you know, it kind of gives you an outline with a bunch of variations, and there's, you know, long sections on the different vegetables and the different, you know, spice.
I've seen that. Yeah, I don't own that, but I've seen that. I've definitely seen that reference, and I've read bits of it online. I love anything like that. Anything that doesn't that gives you a place to start and then lets you be creative with it. I love.
Right, exactly. You don't have to go out and buy all of these, you know, esoteric ingredients. It really kind of working with what you might have in your own cupboard.
Yeah, or just a way that you can start with. Maybe you happen upon an esoteric ingredient and you want to know how to use it, and you can start with the basics and then add that to it. I kind of like that idea too.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think that concludes our interview here, Claire. I'm going to thank you very much for being on the show. This has been so wonderful, not only to catch up with you, but just to kind of pick your brain about your process and, you know, this experiment, 10-year experiment that you've been doing. So I really appreciate it and loved hearing it.
Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure, absolute pleasure.
Right. Well, that was Claire Addis of OutOfTheOrdinaryFood.com. I love the play on words there, you know, out of the ordinary. You know, it's just coming out of the ordinary, and it's out of the ordinary. It's unique. It's very unique. It's just a lovely chat. So glad we got to catch up. And we're gonna listen to some Stir It Up